Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're talking about a rigid midfoot. We're talking about high arches. If you have a high arch, this video is for you. So when we're talking about a rigid midfoot and we're talking about a high arch, we're talking about several different things that you may have not considered before. First of all, we need to know that with a rigid midfoot, with a high arch, you're very likely going to be in a state of inversion at the heel bone, at the calcaneus. So that heel bone is going to be relatively tilted toward the outside. Getting that heel bone inward and underneath is going to help create that high arch. We need that heel bone and that rear foot to begin to tilt inward so that we can begin to collapse that midfoot. So in this position here, the other thing that we really need in order to be able to do that at the rear foot, at the heel bone, is we need a tibia, we need a lower leg that has good internal rotation. That internal rotation is, as it twists in, it's going to grab onto the rear foot there, and that is going to help drive that pronation. That's going to help drive the collapse of the midfoot into that pronated state. As that happens, you will then get forefoot inversion. We need that forefoot to begin to, in essence, twist the other way. So once again, in order to begin to mobilize that midfoot, in order to be able to find that foot pronation, we first need dorsiflexion of the lower leg, dorsiflexion of the tibia. Then, as that tibia comes forward, it will internally rotate, grabbing onto the rear foot, collapsing it in, which will drive that arch into a more pronated or flattened out state. As that happens, the forefoot will, in a sense, begin to twist the opposite direction, which will allow us to then go back into toe off and recreate the arch of the foot as we take that next step forward. So let's talk about how to do that. As I mentioned, the first thing is to drive internal rotation of the tibia, of the lower leg. So again, this is the outside of the tibia, this is the inside of the tibia. If we want that arch to collapse so that we can get true pronation, we want to make sure that lower leg goes into internal rotation first. That's pretty easy to do. You can grab a weight bench. You don't necessarily need a bench. You can use a chair, coffee table. You could even do this on the ground with a little bit of effort. But having something to kind of raise up on does help get some weight through that ankle and makes the mobilization a little easier. So this is a self-mobilization. We're going to put the foot on the bench, and I'm going to take both hands, and I'm simply going to wrap my hands around my lower leg. Remember, internal rotation is in toward midline. So you are simply going to reach forward with the knee and very firmly pull that knee in. What we shouldn't see is this right here. We don't want that knee to come all the way across the body. So drive the knee forward and then twist with those hands that are grabbing on in the front and the back of the knee. And you'll just want to do repetitions. You can do as many as 15 or 20 of these. Get that ankle forward if you can. Get the knee forward if you can. Twist that lower leg firmly. This one takes a little bit of effort. So don't be afraid to kind of get in there and get into it a little bit. So again, knee comes forward, straight ahead. Don't drag it into the midline, and twist. Anywhere from 10 to 15 or even 20 of these. Try both sides, see which side is more stiff. Now we're going to begin to recreate healthy functional foot pronation. I'm going to use that using wedges. You don't need to buy wedges. They are on Amazon. They're really cheap. I can send you the link if you want me to. You can also use a rolled up washcloth. Under the correct foot contacts, that will be just fine. So remember that the first thing we need to do, we have already worked on our tibial internal rotation. So the first thing we need to do for the foot is make sure that we get the heel bone, the calcaneus, to evert. The midfoot and the forefoot needs to begin to invert. So to begin creating heel bone eversion, to get that heel bone to begin to tip inward toward midline, we're going to take one of these wedges and I'm going to put about half of my heel on that very narrowest edge of the wedge, at the very end of the wedge. So half of my heel is on that outside edge of that wedge. Now I'm going to take the other wedge and I'm going to put just my first two toes on the very end of that wedge. Now that I've got the foot contacts in place, I can begin to play around with foot pronation. I'm going to take my other foot, I'm going to put it behind in almost kind of a half lunge, foot is pointing out to the side. Now what I'm going to do is, most of my weight is on this back leg, I'm going to drive my knee forward, keeping most of my weight through my heel as long as I can, keeping the midfoot and the forefoot very soft and relaxed. I'm going to drive that knee forward, and then the knee is going to come in just a little bit right at the end, just over the big toe. I'm not going to dump it all the way in here. That's not going to help out. We just want to come as far forward as we can and bring that knee just over the big toe. As you do that, you will feel that arch begin to collapse. Work on creating that sensation that the forefoot is relaxed all the way through this motion, forward and back. You may want to do this as many as 15 or 20 times. This is a very gentle, easy movement, and it will take, if you've had a rigid high arch for some time, it will take several repetitions for you to begin to feel that midfoot and that forefoot begin to unlock in this movement pattern that you probably haven't experienced for some time. So that is how we begin to get back our ability to pronate through the foot. If you have any questions, please reach out. We'd love to talk to you more about this.